Legendary Pokemon are designed to be more powerful than everything else, which introduces some interesting balance problems in competitive play. In official tournaments, the most powerful legendaries are restricted. That means that depending on the format, they might be illegal to use completely, or if they are, you can only use a maximum of 2 on your team. In the world of competitive singles, these powerful legendaries are relegated to their own format called Ubers. They can only be used in this format and are banned from the lower tiers. For a very long time, Ubers was the peak of power in competitive Pokemon, where these insane legendaries like Ho-Oh, Mewtwo, Kyogre, etc. were free to be used as much as you like. There's no such thing as something being too overpowered here because everything is overpowered. But what if that stops being true? What if something is actually so ridiculously overpowered that even Ubers can't handle it? What if a legendary is too legendary? Ubers was initially not even really viewed as its own format. It was more of a containment zone for all of these broken things, but it ended up being the case that some things were too powerful even for the containment zone, and they had to make a new containment zone for this truly godlike level of Pokemon. And this is when the format called Anything Goes was conceived, a format that, as the name suggests, has no rules whatsoever. Anything can be used with no restrictions. Let's take a look at all of the Pokemon that are too legendary for the legendary format. The Pokemon responsible for the Anything Goes tier even existing in the first place is, of course, the infamous Mega Rayquaza. In the eyes of many, this is the most powerful Pokemon ever conceived. And it redefined what overpowered even meant at the time. Mega Rayquaza just has it all. They gave this guy everything. First of all, it is a rare Mega Evolution that does not require a Mega Stone item. It's one of the most significant drawbacks of running a Mega Evolution is that you can't run other useful items. But Mega Rayquaza only needs to learn the move Dragon Ascent on its moveset to be able to Mega Evolve, a pretty small price to pay. In fact, just about every Mega Rayquaza set wants this move anyway because it's incredibly good. It's a flying type version of Close Combat with 120 power. It's an amazing attack. So Mega Rayquaza sidesteps any drawback that Mega Evolution carries, and it can freely hold whatever item it wants. On top of that, it has absolutely absurd stats, with a whopping 180 base attack, and special attack, far beyond anything else in the game, and it's not as if its other stats provide much of a drawback for this absurd offensive power. It's pretty fast too, with 115 speed, and has respectable bulk, 100 in the defenses and 105 HP. So Mega Rayquaza kind of has everything. It's tanky, has absolutely astronomical stats, and almost no drawbacks in sight. On top of this, it has the ability, upon Mega Evolving, Delta Stream, which sets strong winds on the field. This is incredibly useful because it overtakes other weather effects, so if rain is up, or sand is up, or sun is up, Delta Stream's strong winds will trump that. It will also trump the primal weather effects exclusive to Primal Groudon and Kyogre. And also, while the strong winds are active, you lose all of the weaknesses associated with your flying typing. You still get to keep the stab damage on Dragon Ascent, but you are no longer weak to rock. You're only ×2 weak to ice because the flying weakness is erased. So you're basically a mono dragon type, defensively speaking, but you have all the benefits of flying type offensively, which just makes you that much more incredible. I mean, with all your advantages, you would have at least been ×4 weak to ice, but that's not even true anymore. So Mega Rayquaza is just an absurd Pokemon. And it was the first Pokemon so powerful that it was on every Uber's team, every single one. And it was so much more powerful than everything else that something had to be done. They had to make a new tier to contain this thing. Talk about powerful. Talk about godlike. And what happened next was interesting, because Mega Rayquaza opened up the floodgates and the concept of a Pokemon being banned from Ubers, which in the past was just not something that was done. And this actually led to some interesting developments in a past metagame, the Gen 4 Ubers metagame. And there is some interesting history behind what happened here. So back when Gen 4 was current, the most popular Pokemon simulator was called Shoddy Battle. And on Shoddy Battle, in the Ubers format back then, Arceus was never implemented into the simulator. And this is because there's some complexity around obtaining Arceus on the cartridge. Arceus was not obtainable in Generation 4 on the cartridge until Pokemon Platinum released. Arceus was only obtainable at level 100, which meant that you could not EV train the Arceus on a cartridge, because EV training requires you to level up. Since Arceus was already max level, the only way to give it extra stats from EVs were through the vitamin items, which have a cap on each stat for the amount of EVs they can give. So Arceus was obtainable on cartridge, but with these restrictions, where it could not customize its EV spread like every other Pokemon could, and the Shoddy Battle developers had trouble implementing this EV limitation to their simulator. So the players back then that were playing Gen 4 Ubers in its current day just played without Arceus, even though it was technically obtainable. It was difficult to implement this restriction onto the simulator at the time, and so the metagame formed in a world where Arceus was banned. And this was before the concept of a Pokemon being banned from Ubers. It wasn't banned in the literal sense, it was just unavailable to use because they didn't know how to implement it. So that's what the meta formed around. And so interestingly, when new simulators came out and people figured out how to actually implement this EV restriction, they still kept it the way it was back on Shoddy Battle for legacy's sake. They kept the fact that there was no Arceus. Even though Arceus was never officially banned, they just kept the meta as it was. But there was some debate over whether to do this, because the only reason they did that in the first place were due to technical restrictions, and now those technical restrictions didn't exist. But with the precedent of Mega Rayquaza getting banned from Ubers, this opened up the idea of testing Arceus in Gen 4 Ubers. So they tested Arceus temporarily, and there was a suspect vote on the Pokemon, eventually. And they found that Arceus in Gen 4 Ubers, even with this EV restriction, was actually too powerful for the metagame anyway. The player base didn't like it. And this one is not as cut and dry as the Mega Rayquaza situation. Nobody really denies that Mega Rayquaza should not have been banned. It was pretty clear that Mega Rayquaza was a million times more powerful than everything else and had to go. But this Arceus thing is a little bit disputed. Some people think Arceus is okay. It is extremely good and central when it is available. Swords Dance Extreme Speed combo is powerful in many Ubers formats, and it's true in Gen 4 especially, with a overall lower power level than later generations. The versatility of the type plates and the vast options it has are also difficult to predict and add unpredictability. But this was the decision the community made, and this perhaps established a precedent for Pokemon being suspect tested in Ubers. There is also an alternate Gen 4 Ubers format that does allow Arceus, and it's called Farceus Ubers, which is sort of funny. Farceus is the nickname given to this Arceus with the EV restriction on it. That's what the community called it. So the branching format where Arceus is allowed with these EV restrictions is called Farceus Ubers, and that is playable, has its own community. So there's a bit of a split in the Gen 4 Ubers community, interestingly, where there are two branching formats, one with Arceus and one without. But the Pokemon is still tagged anything goes and banned from Gen 4 Ubers. The next two Pokemon to be banned from the Ubers format, deemed too powerful for the powerful format, were Zacian and also Zacian's Crowned form in the Gen 8 metagame. Yes, it's the funny dog, and I will talk about it here. I will go against my ethos and speak about Zacian-Crowned once more. But first, let's talk about base form Zacian. In its base form, this is a fairy-type Pokemon, a fantastic monotyping. And Zacian has the unbelievably good ability Intrepid Sword, which grants the guy a permanent +1 attack boost. On switch-in, this Pokemon's attack is raised by 1, and that never goes away in Gen 8. I mean, think about the fact that Choice Band is an item that has the same effect, but restricts the Pokemon such that it can only use one move every time it's in. Intrepid Sword is basically a free Choice Band with no downside, and you can stack a damn Choice Band on top of that. So you're wondering maybe, is this Pokemon limited in its stats to have such an amazing ability? Nah. The guy has 130 base attack, 138 speed, or maybe it has low defenses. Nah, 115 in each defense. Pretty solid HP too. So they just went ahead and they gave this dog everything in the world. And it even has a very good physical move pool. But what's even crazier is the fact that Zacian's other form, the crowned form, is even stronger. It does at least have a restriction, which is that it can't hold whatever item it wants. It has to hold the rusted sword, which specifically exists to transform it into the crowned form, but it's a very small price to pay for all the incredible advantages you get. You still have Intrepid Sword, but now you're a Fairy Steel type, which is about 1,000,000 times better. This is the best type combination we've ever seen in Pokemon so far, with an absurd amount of resistances, immunities, and even offensive merit, as Fairy Steel are kind of complementary to one another and just generally very good. Zacian-Crowned also gains a new option, Behemoth Blade, for its steel stab, incredible attack, 100 power, and 100 accuracy. Just insanely solid. And they give Zacian-Crowned an absurd buff to its stats. Now it's 148 speed, which is faster than Mewtwo, it's faster than most things, really. It's crazy how fast that is. It's almost illegal. I feel like it shouldn't be allowed. And then the attack is of course buffed to 130 was good enough. How about 170 base attack? How about 170? So it doesn't take a genius to see why this was bad from Ubers. It's a Mega Rayquaza situation. This guy was 1,000,000 times better than the next best thing. Both Zacian and its crowned form were just insane. Now in the very next gen, they nerfed these two. Intrepid Sword is no longer a permanent boost in Gen 9. It's a temporary boost. The first time you switch in, you get the attack raise, and then the next time it goes away. Also, they received a stat nerf. Zacian-Crowned only has 150 attack now, and it's actually legal to use in Gen 9 Ubers, but there's no denying how absurdly overtuned Gen 8 Zacian and Zacian-Crowned were. There's no denying it. There's some debate about whether Zacian-Crowned in Gen 8 or Mega Rayquaza is the most powerful Pokemon of all time. I personally would still say Mega Rayquaza, just because it has a free item slot and much more variety in its move pool, plus priority in the form of extreme speed and the anti-weather mechanic. It's just got way more stuff happening, but Zacian-Crowned is certainly not very far off at all, and it is more immediately threatening with its enormous speed, and probably better defensively because of the typing. It's pretty damn close, and if you say Zacian-Crowned is better, I wouldn't fault you at all. The next legendary that was too powerful for Ubers was Calyrex-Shadow, which was banned from Ubers in Gen 9. Interestingly though, this Pokemon was released in Gen 8, where it was, at the time, legal to use. But some things changed in Gen 9 that pushed it even further into brokenness. Calyrex-Shadow is an incredibly powerful special attacker, maybe the most powerful ever, with an unbelievable 165 base special attack and 150 speed, and pretty respectable bulk considering those insane stats. Calyrex-Shadow is a psychic ghost type Pokemon, which admittedly is not the best typing on the planet, but with such high speed and good stab options for both of these types, as well as coverage in the form of Grass Knot and Draining Kiss. Calyrex-Shadow was an elite level Pokemon in Gen 8 Ubers. It was incredible, but there were some things keeping it in check there. The typing is exploitable, and when you're a Psychic Ghost type, you're very vulnerable to Shadow Sneak, a priority ghost move that hits you for ×4 super effective damage. Calyrex-Shadow was also stopped in its tracks completely by Yveltal, who was present in Gen 8 Ubers. And Yveltal resists Ghost, is immune to Psychic, and shrugs off most of your other coverage, whilst also threatening a ×4 super effective Sucker Punch that will surely one-hit KO. So despite being clearly pretty damn powerful even among legendaries with really insane stats, and not to mention this ability as one, which combines both Unnerve and Grim Neigh into one. Unnerve prevents the enemy from eating berries, and Grim Neigh is the real important one, which grants you a special attack boost if you KO the enemy. It's like Moxie, but for special attack. And that allows a Pokemon like this to ramp up significantly and just keep getting special attack boosts, as if its special attack wasn't high enough. But despite all of those amazing advantages, it was manageable in the Gen 8 Ubers metagame. But in Gen 9, some things changed in the universe. Yveltal is no longer available, and that was a huge indirect buff for Calyrex-Shadow Rider because Yveltal was incredibly common and incredibly consistent at answering Calyrex-Shadow Rider. And also in Gen 9 Ubers, good special walls are pretty hard to come by. Blissey is still available, but Blissey was nerfed in Generation 9 to no longer have the move Toxic, which is a pretty significant blow. So Blissey is less common in Gen 9 Ubers, and powerful new special wall options like Ting Lu and Clodsire have terrible matchups against Calyrex-Shadow. Clodsire is vulnerable to Psy Shock, which has Stab on it, and Ting Lu is vulnerable to Grass Knot, especially if Calyrex-Shadow Rider boosts up with a nasty plot. The options to actually check Calyrex-Shadow Rider were limited. There is still Giratina Origins Shadow Sneak, which can offensively threaten you, but you can hardly switch Giratina in on this. It's, in fact, very frightened of the 120 power Astral Barrage. Checks to Calyrex-Shadow Rider were almost non-existent, and the metagame of Gen 8, which was a bit better at handling it, is not the same metagame as Gen 9. Plus, Calyrex-Shadow Rider benefited incredibly from the new terastallization mechanic. Terastallization, of course, allows you to change into a new type, keeping the type damage of your previous types, but defensively operating as a new type, and even gaining stab damage on the new type. Calyrex-Shadow Rider can get incredible benefit from this because of how exploitable its typing is. By terastallizing it to a fairy type, now it resists dark and is neutral to ghost instead of being weak to those two types. So the Giratina Origin risking its life to Shadow Sneak you might just die. You can shrug off Shadow Sneak with ease and just KO the thing, ramp up further, and an already difficult to deal with Pokemon is now near impossible to deal with because it can terastallize. The Terra Fairy set was particularly good with draining Kiss, allowing Calyrex-Shadow to even keep healing back and gain extra damage on the draining Kiss to not only deal more damage but heal further with the recovery. So the Pokemon in the Gen 9 environment was just absolutely unstoppable. All the things keeping it in check in the past are just no longer here, and ended up getting banned from Gen 9 Ubers, which is interesting for a Pokemon that was previously not AG, but when you consider all of that, it does make a lot of sense. And finally, the most recent Pokemon too powerful for Ubers was Miraidon, who is a newly released Gen 9 Pokemon. It's the cover legendary for Pokemon Violet version. It's interesting because Miraidon took quite a while to get banned from Ubers, but in the entire time it was legal to use, it was beyond dominant. It was by far the most central threat in Gen 9 Ubers, and the absolute Earth orbited around this thing. Miraidon is incredibly powerful. It is an electric dragon type, which is an incredibly solid offensive typing. Its stats are fantastic. This may look tame compared to Zacian-Crowned, but I mean, these are extremely solid. It's incredibly fast, 135 speed and special attack. Its special defense and defense are also very high for such a fast Pokemon, and so is its HP. Miraidon has the ability Hadron Engine, which on switch-in summons Electric Terrain. This is an incredibly powerful ability on this because Electric Terrain will boost your stab damage on Electro Drift, your signature move, which is a 100 power, 100 accuracy electric type special attack. Not only this, but during Electric Terrain, Miraidon's special attack is increased by 1.33 repeating, of course, X. So you're stacking damage upon damage upon damage. Electric Terrain is boosting your electric moves, Stab is boosting them, and this special attack boost is enhancing that damage further as well. So Miraidon's Electro Drift is an absurdly strong attack. You are so fast, and you might be wondering, yeah, it's strong, but electric is inherently limited by the fact that ground is immune, and that's true. Ground types can completely block electric type attacks, and that keeps them in check a little bit, but Miraidon has such incredible tools to hit the ground types that are trying to switch in. Draco Meteor is just straightforward incredible stab damage on the ground type switch in that can devastate enemies like Ting Lu or Clodsire trying to come in. U-turn is a pivoting move, which is outstanding on something so fast and something that forces particular defensive switch-in. So a very obvious way to defeat a ground type coming in is just a U-turn, pivot to something that now threatens that and keeping that momentum up. And Miraidon even has the move Overheat for fire coverage to hit the one thing that seems like a solid trek, Iron Treads. Iron Treads is a ground steel type, immune to electric and resistant to dragon, but Overheat just one-shots this unfortunate elephant, and wouldn't you know it, Miraidon is laughing all the way to the bank. So the most popular set was this one with heavy-duty boots and just a mishmash of whatever you want. This was the most popular set, though, with Taunt being a fantastic option to disrupt enemies that may have some sort of status effect that defeats you. And just this set was tough to deal with, especially because Blissey was nerfed, and the only status move Blissey still has is Thunder Wave. So Miraidon isn't really that threatened by a Blissey, and it can just pivot freely against it, taunt it even to keep it low. But Miraidon had significant set variety. A Choice Specs Miraidon is perhaps its best set, because the Electro Drift damage is just through the roof, and it's so incredible at luring in the ground types that check Electro Drift. I mean, a Specs Dracometeor against a Tingler or a Clodsire is dealing significant damage, and they can't really come in on that more than a couple times before they drop and faint. And then when the ground type goes down, well, Electro Drift spam goes to the moon. It's an unbelievably spammable attack. By the way, I didn't even mention that it also deals 1.33x damage if the damage is super effective, if it didn't need enough damage boosters. But yeah, I mean, it's a common game plan in Pokemon to eliminate the ground type and then overwhelm the enemy with electric Pokemon, but this isn't even a game plan, really, because Miraidon is the whole package. Miraidon itself is able to just defeat all the ground types that can come in, and then it just clicks Electro Drift, plus it can pivot. It feels as if there's a very limited counterplay to this, and the few things that could sort of answer it would on almost every team as a result. Like Blissey could at least wall Miraidon and, seismic toss it and beat it 1v1. Sort of, but guess what? There's even a Miraidon set that beats that, because Miraidon has access to Calm Mind, and this move, Parabolic Charge, which is a lower power electric move, but it has a recovery effect. With this, you can just boost in Blissey's face. They don't actually have a way to status you, to cripple you. They have to seismic toss you, but Miraidon can boost up to the point where Parabolic Charge is actually dealing good damage, and then you can recover all the damage you take from seismic toss. So not even Blissey beats Miraidon. Blissey not beating a special attacker is crazy. To beat this, Blissey actually had to terrestrialize ground, so it was immune to electric, which is just insane. That's just crazy. Blissey has to do more to beat a special attacker? Yeah, that's not right. That's even at the height of Kyogre's power, Blissey was keeping it in check. There's, of course, Scarf Miraidon, which can outrun just about everything on the planet. Not to mention the fact that electric terrain is enabling future Paradox Pokemon to gain their Quark Drive boosts, which is also incredible on fellas like Iron Bundle and Iron Valiant. So eventually, even though Miraidon was technically able to be answered, it was dubious. I mean, the things that could check it lose to certain sets. No one Pokemon actually answers Miraidon, and the variety in its sets and how dominant it was just warranted a ban in the eyes of the Ubers community. It was suspected, and they voted to ban the guy. So there you go. So these are the most powerful Pokemon in existence. Pokemon so powerful that they are relegated to their very own containment zone within a containment zone. Who is your favorite of these broken Pokemon? Do you like the dog? Do you like the horse? Let me know your perspective down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.